recording. I'm seeing funny faces. And so the recording will start once everyone agrees to it.
I agree.
Thank you. I think you have to do it online, though.
Oh, I have to do it online.
Yeah. Madeline, I'm actually going to mute you so that
we
don't
haven't
have
been
any-
asked we haven't been asked to approve. It just said Lee Hayes has started recording. So
Okay,
maybe
then-
that's the notice we get.
Yeah.
No consent needed.
So jump off the screen if you don't like.
Oops. Cancel. Okay. All right. So we are going to keep you all muted, and once we do introductions, and we'll just have you quickly say your name. We're going to ask you to turn off. You can see some people don't have their cameras on. They've and if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you can see where to turn it off, and then it will just come up as a circle with the first letter of your name. And that will just keep us from having not only the sound interruptions, but also visual interruptions that might distract us from our topic tonight. And then we also have a chat box, which is should be in the upper right-hand corner. And if you have questions as we're going through, please feel free to write them into the chat box. And then as each presenter finishes, they will have a few minutes, or take a few minutes if you had any questions, to try to answer those. And we're going to go through with 4 presenters, and then at the end we're going to provide some tips and then more time for questions and answers. So let's start first, and before I introduce our special guest tonight, let's start with, and I'll tell you, and you have to unmute yourself and then remute. But on my screen, Ingrid is in the top left-hand box. So Ingrid, if you would just say who you are very quickly. You have to unmute to do it.
Hold on. Okay, I'm Ingrid.
And where are you from, Ingrid?
Well, I'm on Kezar Lake right now, and ordinarily Ipswich, Mass.
Excellent, thank you. And Sue, you're next. You have to unmute. If I can. So if you could unmute. No, we can't hear you.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I'm Sue Rowan on our camp at Virginia Lake Road, and we also have a place in Portland.
Excellent. Thank you. And Jimmy. Are you there, Jimmy? You have to unmute.
There we go.
There we go.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Jimmy. I'm in Bridgeton.
Excellent. Thank you. And Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe, and we're on Kezar Lake, west side.
Super. And Madeline, can you unmute yourself? Or did I throw you for a loop there by muting you? Madeline's on the phone with us, so she may not be able to. All right. Well, Madeline's the phone, just in case you see that. And Heinrich.
So I'm Heinrich Worm, and I live on the Lower Bay, straight across from Joe Ratner.
Super. Thank you. And the Katzes.
Well, I'm Bob, and my wife
Pam,
and we're in Chatham, New Hampshire.
and we have a rainbow. We have a rainbow over Pleasant Mountain facing east.
Nice.
Yep.
You should be out taking a photo.
No, but I'm trying to.
All right. And then Joe.
I'm Joe Radner, and I live on the Lower East Side opposite Heinrich Wurm.
So you guys can
Grüß
wave.
Gott, Heinrich.
Super, thank you. So I'm Lee Hayes, as you all know, Education Director for the Greater Lovell Land Trust and a wannabe photographer. And I've asked Mary Jewett from Lakes Environmental Association, Susan Welchman, and Brent Lejeune from Greater Lovell Land Trust to join us tonight. And just a quick background on them. Mary is a naturalist teacher for Lakes Environmental and has spent a lot of time taking photos, has all kinds of cameras, and she especially takes bird photos and has just taught herself. So she's an amazing photographer. And Susan is in the middle. So if you're looking at a picture of three people, Susan is sitting behind Mary and Brent. And Susan Welchman was an editor for National Geographic. And so we're excited to have her here. And Brent Lejeune is on the GLLT board. And he is a sawyer. He owns Lovell Box and Western Maine Slab Works, but he was a professional photographer prior to moving to the Lovell area. So those are our guests. We're going to begin tonight by showing you photos that I will present, and each of us will take time to talk briefly about the photos that we have taken and the stories that they may or may not tell. And then, as I said, we will go to some hints and questions and answers. And then we have an assignment for you at the end. And I will actually send that assignment. We will share it with you here on the recording, but then I will also send it to you in an email. So if you could all just now go down to the bottom of your screen where the mute button is, and also hit, there's a turn off camera, and that will take your photo off, and we'll stay on. And now let me get to present now on my entire screen.
And meanwhile, I just want to mention that there's a chat window that you can use to, if you have questions as we're going along, feel free to send a chat message and ask questions as we're speaking. And at the end of each of our time, we'll take a minute to answer some of those questions that pop up in the chat window.
Thanks, Brent. Okay, Mary.
All right, so Mary Jewett, thank you for the introduction. So I really started getting into photography in 2013. I decided to do a photo every day just because I was taking pictures, but I had no direction. So I wanted to take a photo every day and share it with friends and family just on Facebook. So, and I just kind of evolved from that. I had a tiny little point and shoot and just worked my way up as I hit roadblocks on wanting to get a certain photo, but with the equipment I had, it just wasn't possible. So I kind of worked my way up that way. So I've been doing the daily photo project on the off years. So 13, 15, 17, 19. So this picture is from that daily photo project last year. And all of the pictures that I'm showing today were taken in Lovell. So this is on Sabatis Mountain. And Brent and I go up there pretty often because we live close by. And this was in the winter. I'm just giving a little backstory because it's kind of funny. And we were snowshoeing, and we snowshoed down, and we had gotten quite a bit of snow. So I passed this spot, and I loved it with the hemlock and this birch tree, and it was just so beautiful. So we continued down, and I took that picture and posted it that day, and I was very excited. And then we went up several weeks later, and I remember trying to find it again, and I couldn't. And it's because it was like I was like 2 feet shorter, like lower down. So where that hemlock passed with the birch tree was not visible anymore because the snow was gone. So, and every time I go on Sabatis, I go and find this tree, and it's on the trail down, the trail we take down. And I always kind of pass my hand over it as I go past. And the daily photo project is really fun because I can really visualize and remember that particular day based on this one image. So it's kind of a special way to document a year for me. And I try really hard to have the image that I post be something I took that day. So that's my birch tree. So Lee, you can go to the next one. So this is in the woods behind our house. And I don't know the specific mushroom species. Maybe Lee does. No. Okay. I'll just call it a little orange mushroom. But I was very excited about this image because it's got three kind of neat species. The mushroom, of course, draws the eye, but the dark green leaves that are in these sets of two is partridge berry. And then the patterned leaf in kind of the middle of the photo is something called rattlesnake plantain, which is not a terribly common plant. So I was very excited to get three different species in this image. And I have to get really low to the ground. I mean, none of these things grow really high. So I was probably laying on my stomach to get this picture. And those two pictures, the birch and this one, I did take them with a quote unquote real camera, but those are images that anybody can take with a phone, even as long as you see them and notice them. So the next pictures, you kind of need to have special equipment. So this was a really fun experience. There's a huge backstory to this image. Somebody had told me that there were two babies on Heald Pond with the loons, and I really wanted to go out and capture them. So I got up super early in the morning, and for this, the most important special piece of equipment was a kayak. And so I get my kayak all packed up, and I go to get into it. And anybody that's been over to Heald Pond, the launch is a little bit steep, and I ended up flipping my kayak. All my equipment and gear and everything in it, I flipped it right over. And thankfully, my sister works at a shop that sells dry bags. So all of my camera equipment was in dry bags. And but it was, I had a heart attack, of course. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment to get these shots. So I unpacked everything, and I was 100% going to go home. I was like, nope, it's a sign. I'm going home. This is a terrible idea. And so I brought everything up to my car, and the dry bag had done their job and totally dry. All my camera equipment was totally fine. And I was soaked head to foot. I mean, hair was wet. I had gone fully in. But since my camera gear was okay to go, I decided to go out. And if you've ever been out on Heald Pond, as soon as I left the little channel that you launch on, they were two adults and two babies together. And it was really a special thing. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and there was fog. And so I did get a lot. And I think Susan's going to talk about this, but especially in the age of digital cameras, it's amazing that you can just take a lot of images. And because they were so cooperative and there was nobody else on the pond, I was able to play around with camera settings, with positioning, without risking losing the shot, because they just kind of stuck around. So it was incredible. So this shot, I can't tell, and I think some people can tell the sex of the adult loons. So some people would look at this image and say, oh, they're riding on their mom's back. And every time I have a loon picture with a baby on its back, it's always the mom, but it could be the dad. They do switch back and forth, and both of the adults were there. So the babies, these are not quite day-old babies, the really small ones. So they were both riding on the adult's back, and the adult just kind of seemingly suddenly was like done with it. So Lee, if you go to the next image, so all of a sudden the adult just kind of reared up and flapped its wings, and the babies just went sliding down off the back, and it was pretty funny. And part of me was like, oh, I wish I had video. I do like to take video of birds as well, but I did get the series, which was pretty funny. And then the last one was they were just behind the adult, and it was quite sweet to see, but they weren't on the back for very long. It was a short amount of time that the adult was tolerating it, with the baby starting to get a little bit too big for that kind of behavior. So it was a very sweet experience, and really special. So, but for those pictures, I really had to have pretty specific equipment. So some images you can capture with any piece of equipment, but this one, because of the really low light, because of the conditions, I had to have a mid-range DSLR camera, which at the end we can talk specifics about the different cameras, but a small point and shoot that I started my project with in 2013 never would have worked for these images. And then I think I included, Lee, did we include the before? So these two images, the one on the top is as shot on that morning. And it was extremely foggy. The sun had not quite hit the pond yet. And so it was quite low light when I took those pictures in the fogginess. So I am not an expert at Photoshop, but I did do some touching up, and I'm sure that Brent and Susan could probably take that original image and make it even more incredible with their formal training. But you can see that you can bring out a lot more detail using editing programs. And I used to feel like, oh, is it cheating to do that? But it's really not, because the image is there, the data is there for that picture. You just have to bring it out and know how to bring it out. So
I think the most thing is you don't want to change the atmosphere. Like, you could defog that, but the point is that it was foggy in the background. So you want to you want to retain the facts.
Yeah.
But you can help people read it better.
Yeah. So so those are the images that I chose to share with you all today. I have about a zillion, and I do a calendar. I've done a calendar for several years in a row, and I think some people have seen it, but I usually try to use images from the previous year. So this one might be in next year's calendar, but yeah. But I wanted to choose recent ones, and also from Lovell. They're from right here in town. So yeah, I had to narrow it down. So those are mine.
Thanks, Mary. All right. Did you have any questions? Because I can't see the chat box.
No, we don't have any questions in the chat, so we can move on.
Okay. So I'm next, and my story is a little bit the same and a little bit the opposite of Mary's story. I've had a lot of cameras over the years, and I have really bad camera aura, but I started out most recently with a Canon Rebel T3i, and was really enjoying it, playing with different lenses, having fun, trying to figure out how to use it. And then I was at Holt Pond here in Bridgeton, and I slipped on a wet boardwalk that I knew I shouldn't be going across, and broke my wrist, and my camera got wet. So it went swimming. It was not in a dry bag. I since have a dry bag. But because of that, Bob Katz, who is here in the room with us, knew how much I enjoyed taking photos, and he lent me a PowerShot, a Canon PowerShot SX720HS. And even though I had one wrist in a cast, I was able to play with that and had some fun taking photos with it. And so my husband bought me one, and after probably 7 months, I finally returned Bob's to him. And so the photos I took actually occurred, or that I chose for this, actually was from something that occurred on May 28th at Otter Rock at Heald and Bradley Ponds Reserve. And I happened to be there with Bob's wife, Pam, who's also in the room with us tonight. And it was a very, very mosquito-y, buggy day. I think we could only spend about an hour at Otter Rock because the mosquitoes were just biting through all of our bug gear. But while we were there, the dragonflies were emerging. And so just that's always a special moment. I love insects. I love dragonflies. And this is what we saw. So you can see the exoskeletons. These are common basket tails. And I love seeing the wings, the patterns, the way that they're not yet developed. And on this one, what really caught my attention was the way the wings were uncurling, as well as all the little the hair and the spines on the legs and on the face. And my final image is this one, where the wings are finally fully expanded, but they are kind of cloudy still before the dragonfly dries out completely and can fly away. And the whole emergence process takes a little over an hour. But so the light hit it just right that morning. So there was a rainbow image there. And I have to admit, I took all of these with my iPhone. And that's what, when I'm doing close-ups now, that's the camera I'm using. So, Brent.
Hi, everybody. Brent here. So my way of engaging in photography has changed a lot over the years. I started in art school where, there's a lot of, concept that goes into the work, and you're talking about it for endless hours. And then I ended up working in commercial photography, which is all about, basically you're under contract to get a certain photo. So you're setting out with this specific intention. My way of shooting now is basically just living my life, and with the phone in my pocket, or sometimes a small point and shoot. I don't own a professional camera anymore because it doesn't suit my needs. So I decided to go just to shooting with the phone mostly. And this is up on Sabatis Mountain. And I was up there doing some work, some survey for the land trust, and had my dog up there. And this is just before sunrise. And I really like to photograph in the changing light, and like those sunrise and sunset is where the most dramatic change in light of the day is going to be. So for me, like it's all about light and just like watching how the environment changes with the light. So Lee, if you could bump to the next one. So this is just moments later, basically the same angle, as that sun crests over the horizon. Everything changes color. These little accents start picking up on different things. You've got the light sort of filtering through that grass in the foreground, and it actually it clouds the lens a little bit, so you do lose some saturation in some of the plants and stuff because of the way the camera is seeing all that light. But to me, that's just like the interest of it, you know, is to sort of see what the camera's going to do with all that light, and just sort of watch for changes and what's going on. So you can go ahead and bump to the next one, because this is probably taken moments later, looking the other way out towards Baldface and Mount Washington. So this is the opposite way. So instead of that backlit, that sun coming into the lens, you're seeing what the sun is shining on. So the sun is basically highlighting that mountain ridge line. And that's, you know, you can even see the little shadows behind South Baldface. So you can see how low the light really is. It's almost like it's a horizontal. It's like if you're shining a flashlight at something horizontally, it's just illuminating it and casting a shadow behind it. And then you can click to the next one. Is just like a more close-up example of that with the dog and the trees, where that light is like just casting that yellow red glow on everything, and just really like bringing things into stark focus. So I don't know, that's what interests me about photography now, is just when I see light phenomenons that interest me, and wherever I am. It obviously helps if you're in a beautiful setting, like being on top of that is, but even simple things like the other morning I was down at my my log yard sawmill area where I do a lot of my work now, and it was the same sort of thing, that light was just filtering through the trees, and I just looked up, and it was just kind of like a scene that struck me. So I took a few photos there. So really, for me, it's all about the light, and then the subjects are there to sort of almost describe what the light is doing. So that's what I've got for you folks today, and hopefully you know gain some interest or understanding through that. So what I got.
Okay, so we're going to Susan next.
Okay. I'm not, yeah, sure. I'm not going to show you any images. I'm just going to encourage you. I'm going to sort of follow on the heels of Brent. I was an editor at National Geographic for 35 years, but I retired and I live in Lovell, and I'm a gardener now. And I think about photography all the time. And it's the way I look at life, which is sort of has a frame around everything I look at. And maybe that's just a life spent taking pictures, looking at pictures. And as Brent said, it's all about the light. It is truly all about the light. And you can put a subject in there, but the most important thing, I think, for everybody is to shoot a lot. I can assume that none of you are shooting as much as you could, that you should. It's not like film, which cost a lot of money in the old days. Now you can shoot endlessly until your battery's gone. And the most important thing is that you organize your pictures, and that you are, when you take hundreds of pictures of one thing, that you look at what you have thoroughly. Don't look so much while you're shooting. Shoot with your heart and your eyes, and don't use your brain. Just keep shooting until you feel you've seen something, no matter what it is, that you saw something. And you stop, and you categorize your images. Take them in your editing program and put all your likes together. Put all the subjects that have shadows and all the subjects that have green, or your focal length, organize it in your focal length. Go through everything once. And then on the second go round, delete the ones or move the ones into a folder that you don't want to see again. And do that over and over. It's a funnel. Envision it. It's just a funnel. You have everything you shot, and then you reduce it, reduce it, reduce it. It doesn't matter how many times until you end up with a very few images that you want to look at over and over, and that you don't get tired of looking at. And that's probably your best picture. And it encourages you, I think, in your whole building of your aesthetic, to look at everything you've shot. Actually look at pictures that anybody has shot. And try to envision what they saw or what they were looking for. When you present someone an image, what is it you want to tell them? Is it something that you think you saw and nobody else saw? Probably not, because every image you'll ever take has been shot billions of times before. So shoot something that has meaning for you, because the only thing that makes that image different is you and how you see something. No matter what it is, if it's a knot on a table, or if it's your child or your dog, or a magnificent place you are, or an animal that only you've ever seen. Just really put yourself into it and don't stop. Just shoot it over and over and over from every which way. Get down, get up, look at it from the side. And as Brent says, shoot on the edge of the light, which means very early and very late. And most photographers don't shoot anything during the day. So look at the light when it's hardest to shoot. And can I get it? Mostly just find light. Even when you're driving, just look at something that's illuminated in a way you never saw it before. If it's like grass on the side of the road, just look at light and how it changes what you've seen. And compare it to a dull, foggy day where you just stay inside because there's really nothing to see. When it's light that draws you outside and shows you things you never saw in that certain way, blade of grass, anything, get down, look at it. And then if it's, take your phone out. I'll never own another, I've had them all, and I'll never own another camera. I shoot with my phone because it reduces your stress. And what you want to get, if you're not comfortable with your equipment, it's no good. So shoot with a camera that you really don't have to think about using. And most people don't have to think about using their phone. Just think about how close or how far or how the framing is. Really, that's all I want to say. And just shoot more and shoot without thinking and enjoy it. Because it's such a valuable thing that you have. Even if you just text an image to someone, just put now on it and send it to them. And they'll be so pleased that you thought of them or in a certain way. And just shoot anything. The subject really doesn't matter that much as the way you saw it and how you interpreted it. And it's the difference between a great photograph and a not so great one, if you put everything into it and it has meaning for you. That's all.
All right.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
So now we thought we would offer some tips of things that work for us. I think we already got some of those. I don't know if Mary or Brent want to share tips, or I have a couple I can share. Shall I go first? Okay. So one of the things that I've learned with anything that I'm using to take photographs is to make sure that the water is even. So if you're taking a photograph, just remember that water doesn't tip to the sides. So you might even want to crop your photo when you get home and you're downloading them to make sure that the water is always even. Otherwise, the water would spill off the earth and we wouldn't have any. Another thing that I've learned using the iPhone is that when I have a particular subject that I'm looking at up close, is I tap on that subject on the phone screen, and then it tends to focus on it better. And maybe you all know that already, but that's been an acquired one for me. And I'm always looking at little details in different ways. I was glad to hear Susan say, look at different ways. I was going to share with you photographs I took of a cicada emerging, and I have it from all different angles, and you can see all different parts of the body, but I didn't use that because that was at cemetery number 4, which is not a GLLT property. We wanted to try to stick with GLLT properties for this. So those are my big tips. Oh, and take the photo and then crop it later when you get home. So then you can get your close-up image if you didn't get it when you're out there. But don't crop it on your phone when you're out there. And it looks like, did Heinrich?
I'm going to take Heinrich's question.
Okay.
I'm going to take Heinrich's question if that's okay. And Susan might have some supplemental stuff since she was, so involved with editing large numbers of images. But basically, for software, the Adobe suite is sort of the standard for photography. There's Bridge, which is just basically a browser that allows you to sort your images, and you can mark them. And to what Susan was saying about funneling down, narrowing down the images, you can, there's a star system, so you can just bump through them with the arrows and hit Control-1 for 1 star, Control-2 for 2 star, and so on. And that actually groups them into different categories. So you can then say, okay, I only want to look at my 5-star images, or I only want to look at my 3-star through 5-star images. And it just helps you take a big pile of pictures and kind of narrow them down. Secondly, when you want to go to doing some adjustments in terms of contrast or brightness or saturation, Photoshop is going to be the program of choice for that. I'm sure there are some other ones out there too that are sufficient, but what's great about Photoshop is it can do anything you can imagine. And what's great about how the world is today is anything you want to do to your photo, you can search on YouTube how to do it, and there will be someone who has gone through that procedure and show you their screen and talk you through how to do it. Whether it's to, composite 2 photos together, or just something simple like brightening up a sky, or blurring out something, or removing dust, or whatever. So all that being said, that's sort of the rundown for the professional software. Right now, for me, oftentimes I use the quick editor on the phone. If you just open the image on your phone, you can just hit edit. You can add contrast. You can crop it. You can rotate it. If you didn't get that skyline perfectly straight, like what Lee was saying, you can actually just rotate that in your phone. The other editor I use is actually Instagram, because they have great adjustments on there. And so I just will pop a photo in Instagram and go through my edits on that and posts briefly. But if I don't want it up, I just delete the photo and off Instagram, and it will be saved in my phone. And then I can email it off to somebody or do whatever I was going to do with the photo, and simply using the Instagram interface as an editor. So that's sort of the gamut of, and the one I forgot to mention is Lightroom, which is more for editorial photographers who want to be able to do batch adjustments and quickly sort through a pile of images and do things in batches. So that's what I've got on software. I don't know if Susan has anything to add.
Well, the editing program on your iPhone is fabulous. You can do, it's like a miniature Photoshop. And I don't encourage anyone to alter their images to a great degree, but you have to think of your image the raw image as note taking. I mean, it's really incomplete until you assign it what you saw. It tends to be flat and with no depth, and it generally is not what you thought it was going to be. So you might disregard it, but with just slight adjustments of upping contrast, you can change and improve an image, and it can be like what you saw. I think the editing program on the iPhone is great.
And for those loon photos, I actually used Lightroom for most of that, and it has a really very basic noise reduction, and it has dehaze as a setting, so you can just move the bar over and it will make it more clear. So I didn't take all the fog out because it was a foggy day, and I think it did add something, and I think it would look weird if I had. So there's still a little bit of fuzziness, but it allows you to just see the picture a little bit better. I've used Photoshop, and I do use Photoshop to put a watermark on. So some of these images, if I shared them on social media or in other places, I would put my name on them. Some pictures I take, and I don't care too much about them. If they're super generic or just not a great photo, somebody can take it if they want, but I don't think they're going to do much with it. But so Photoshop I use for doing the watermark, but I do like Lightroom. It's really easy to use. I think it's got some and it's powerful to be able to edit those images. And I did take the loon photos in with a Nikon D750, which is a DSLR, and I did take them in RAW file type. Which is a really big file, and it just gets a lot of data. Brent knows a lot more about the different file types, but I used to just shoot in JPEG, so it was like the fine quality setting, which is fine. But if I want to use them in any kind of publications, and sometimes I do use my images for work, for things that I do for LEA. And if I want to make a calendar, if I want to do something kind of special, blow them up at all, having a higher resolution image is important. So when I got out there, I wasn't shooting in RAW. And as soon as I saw them and I knew that this was the time I'm going to see these amazing animals, then I switched to shooting in RAW because I knew that I'd be able to manipulate them better on the back end. So, and it all worked out.
So Mary, Moira has a comment in the chat box. She says, I love Lightroom both for filing and for editing, but I rarely use an iPhone. So you're saying you use it for
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not anti-iPhone. All I'm saying is that as someone who doesn't normally use their iPhone for photographs, I'm photographing on a camera, I find Lightroom is wonderful because it allows me to organize my photographs in the ways that I want to, and it has, at least for me, as much editing capability as I think I'm able to cope with. So I haven't found Photoshop. It does a lot. Dehaze is of course brilliant, but it does plenty of other things. So I personally will recommend Lightroom to other amateurs like me because I think it's very easy, and I can also put it on my iPad or on my phone, and I can edit there or on my laptop. So it's accessible. It's easy to use. It's not hard.
Thanks, Moira.
Thank
I hadn't heard of it before. Other questions?
So Lee, in the interest of tips, one of the things that I find is really important to me photographing birds, and if anybody's interested in photographing birds, I've done it so much in so many different places and settings, and I'm a twitcher. If anybody knows what a twitcher is, I'll go and look for rare birds. There's a Clark's Grebe in Augusta right now, everybody, anyway. So, but if a bird is like in a shrub or in the bushes, it can be really hard because if you're using autofocus, which I do often use autofocus, it's hard to focus on that one thing. And so Lee was saying with her phone, if you tap the image, tap the subject on the screen, it will focus on what you tap. A lot of cameras have something called spot focus, which I discovered kind of late in the game. But basically spot focus, it will focus on what is in the middle of your viewfinder. And that has been a huge thing for me because especially if you're far away, your camera's like, what do you want me to do right now? Like, what are you asking me to do? Because it doesn't know there's a bird right there. So spot focus has been really important for me. And it helps me get the shot faster. And occasionally I will switch to manual mode if my camera's just like, I don't see what you want me to see right now. But it's a really kind of a fast way for me to get the image of a bird, because if anybody photographs birds, they're moving. So you get as many shots as you can until they're gone. And that's kind of my philosophy. Is with the loons, it was a little different because they're just staying there all day and I had to go to work. But often when you're photographing wildlife, you just get as many as you can and then they're gone. So it's good to know what settings would work best in a particular situation before you get out there, because you might not have a lot of chances to do adjustments. So spot focus, adjusting the focus. If you're using a real camera, an actual camera, understanding your focal points is really important so that when the time comes, you're not cursing your autofocus. So you can actually focus on what you want it to do.
Thanks, Mary. Other questions out there? No? Susan, do you have any more comments to share with us?
Well, just that I wish I could help each of you with what you want to shoot. You know, it's difficult in a group because your experience and your preferences are so varied. So an individual, a rapport with an editor, individual photographer with an editor is the best way to work. An editor can help a photographer see what they're trying to gather and their style, and in any way, it's like being a coach. But I wish I could just talk to each of you. But when Lee tells you what our plan is for the remainder, maybe we'll have that opportunity.
Yeah, we'll be able to see what you see.
Yeah.
I think.
So we have another question from Heinrich here. Is anyone still using a tripod? Short answer is yes.
Yes. Yeah. I don't use it in my kayak, but absolutely when I'm shooting wildlife, especially, I use a tripod because my camera equipment is too heavy for my weak little arms for me to actually hold that equipment steady. So a tripod's important.
A lot of photographers, wildlife photographers, use bean bags. So that's a kind of a lightweight thing that, you know, wherever you are, you can throw a bean bag down and it'll steady. And of course, to remember about breath, that you breathe in, you hold your breath while you're shooting.
Yes.
Squeeze, don't push, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do hold my breath. I didn't know that was like a technical thing, but yeah, especially when I'm shooting birds.
And the way you stand. I mean, I'm sure Moira, I'm sure a lot of wildlife photographers know exactly how to stand and to make your body a tripod. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have one, there are ways.
Now, the sort of rule of thumb that, you know, I guess they taught us in art school is if you're shooting at over a 60th of a second, you shouldn't need a tripod. Under a 60th of a second shutter speed, you probably do, to not get any lens blur. That's a general rule. The longer the lens is, the more likely you are to need a tripod. And most you and us are on automatic settings, so we're not necessarily paying attention to shutter speed. So the concept is low light, tripod, bright light, probably not necessarily, long lens, tripod, short lens, probably not necessary.
Yeah, the other thing is use a tree or anything that's very steady and to put yourself against.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all kinds of tricks for that kind of thing because often you're shooting on the run and you haven't got time.
Joe, a smartphone automatically adjusts the shutter speed according to the light. So if you're in a really low light situation, you might notice that the photo comes out a little blurry. That's probably because that shutter speed is going below that, approximately 60th of a second. If you're out in bright sunlight, the smartphone might be shooting at 1/3200th of a second. We don't really know. We don't really, I think, ever get that information. There's also sensitivity that gets adjusted, which is basically how much light the sensor is going to absorb. So those things are directly related.
And I know when I last year took a trip to Ecuador, and I've been a few times, and I this past trip I ended up getting the D750 because it one of the common compliments of this camera was it was really good in low light, and you could adjust. And I do use manual settings often, especially for wildlife photography, and you could turn up the light sensitivity so that you could have that faster shutter speed, faster to get like the movement of the birds. Because if you don't get, I mean, anybody that's taken a picture of a hummingbird, you know that often it looks like a little tube because if the wings are moving that fast and your camera doesn't go that fast, you're not going to pick that up. So there are ways that you can improve your equipment to help with those low light situations. And that's kind of what I was saying about starting my first project and working my way up camera wise, because I just kept running into roadblocks. Like, I can't get this shot. I need a different piece of equipment. We should tell them about the assignment. It's almost 8.
Yes, we should. So this is the assignment, and I will send this out in an email in case you forget. But we are inviting you to go shoot on any one or more GLL property. Take a lot of photos, but we're asking you to send us, and you can send them to me, 6 photos of your choice, and by August 25th. So you're going to GLLT properties, or just one property, whatever you choose. You're taking a bunch of photos, but sending us only 6. And we need those by August 25th. And then we will provide you with some feedback after the 25th. It won't be immediately that day or the next day or the next day, but soon after the 25th, we'll provide you with some feedback. So up to 6. Yes, thank you. Up to 6. It doesn't have to be 6, but no more than 6, please. Any questions about that?
Will go ahead.
You were muted.
I was muted?
Yeah, you were muted. Oh. Now you're not muted.
Oh, we just hope everybody will enjoy it and just give us an opportunity to talk to you about your pictures. And we can't talk about them if you don't give us something.
Yeah. And I want to see what other people are seeing, because we all see things differently. And you might be seeing something in the forest that one of us wouldn't have picked up on. Or on the lake or on the mountain or wherever. So
yeah, gives us an opportunity to continue the discussion. not just tonight, but one other thing, one other way to talk about photography. Because we're photographers, we're a group of people interested in photography, so we have a lot to say to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I had mentioned, we were kind of planning this was, we don't want to tell you like where you should go or shouldn't go, but my thought was if there's a GLT property that you specifically really like, it'd be great to go to that one because you know it very well. But it would also be great if there's a GLT property that you've never visited to go visit that. You can look on the website and say, oh, I've never been to, let's say, why can't I think of, Keyser River Reserve. And you go down there and see for the first time, see a new place through your lens, through your camera lens for the first time, and see how that changes the way that you shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Super. Well, if there are no other questions, and we have 2 minutes, so if you have a question, whoop, one just came in. Zoe, we're hoping so. So stay tuned with that, okay? We would like to share them if possible.
We'll find a way.
Right.
We'll find a way. I'm hoping that everybody or most people will take advantage of this opportunity, because I think it'll be fun to see everybody's.
Yes. Any other questions? Bobcats, is there any way to get any depth of field on, was it on an iPhone? I didn't see the whole thing.
Yes. I don't know.
The question is there a way to get depth of field?
I think he means to shorten the depth of field, I'm guessing.
Shorten the depth of field or to increase the depth of field. I mean, you can use f/22 in a good camera, and yet the iPhone doesn't give you that versatility, does it?
Yeah, I always play with it because I think it depends on the light, and it depends on if everything is illuminated. It won't know. You just can't. But if you have a kind of if you have a lit foreground and a darker background, it will. The iPhone is good for certain things, and it won't do everything.
Right.
But if you see through it often enough, you'll use it. It's just like a tool, and you'll use it for what that camera can do. But don't try to make it do everything.
In general, if you're doing a close-up in low light, the background will drop out of focus. Yeah. That's one thing. Yeah, and Zoe just mentioned portrait mode. I've noticed that I don't have an iPhone, I have an Android, and I've noticed that if I go on portrait mode, it shortens the depth of field, so you can get a soft, a background that drops out of focus, essentially.
Super. Well,
and Google searches are really great for that stuff, because somebody out there has tried every possible thing you can do with an iPhone and would know that.
You can shoot through cellophane. You can scratch up like a piece of cellophane and make a hole in it and shoot through it, and you can do all kinds of tricks if that's what you want to play around with. Yeah.
So that will be our topic for next summer: tricks.
Tricks for phone photography, because a lot of people are doing that now.
Yeah, that would be cool. Well, I want to thank our guests tonight, Mary, Susan, and Brent, and thank all of you for coming. We hope that this was beneficial, and we hope that you will have fun and play with the assignment and send something back to us, up to 6 photos, by August 25th. And that's all for tonight's photography workshop.
Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I'm very, very sorry I was so late. Something came up, but at least
we're glad you were able to join us.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
All right.
Hey.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Keep shooting.
Keep shooting. All right, I'm going to close this out, okay?